There we go. Thank you very much. So a word of welcome from my side at our uh, webinar about the emergency preparedness elements that we are going to face. I really appreciate you all having made time to be here. I am going to ask that you please keep your microphones muted. We will do our best to have some time for questions and answer session later on, but you can also post any questions that you have in the chat box, and we will try and get to that. If we do not get to all the questions, for example, in the chat box, please feel free to keep sending them through, and we will certainly make every effort to address those questions. So there we go. Let's kick the ball into play officially. We are going to have a look at emergency preparedness. And one of the first issues that I thought that I would address is the question, why would the Fire Protection Association of Southern Africa be talking about emergency preparedness? In some senses, it seems a little bit disconnected. So one of the realities here is that for a few years, I spent time in our power generating entities' engine room, worked for them, and it became very evident for me that if we had good emergency preparedness established at as many places as possible, and it was a requirement that all sites throughout Eskom had to have emergency preparedness plans. They also included fire risk as one of the elements that we had to look at. So we're not moving away from our core, but we are finding an instrument that will truly help us to ensure better fire safety, better fire preparedness, and better fire response at the different workplaces that we're involved with. So that very much is the altruistic reasoning behind talking about emergency preparedness. We believe that it is a very important part within the workplaces, and that it also then adds to our core focus to make sure that places are more fire safe. I will also have to reveal and declare that there is, other than the altruistic purpose that we're talking about this, there is a bit of a commercial purpose. We have, because of what we believe in as FPASA, we've put together a training program so that people at workplaces can understand emergency preparedness better. And today's presentation will follow very much what we see in a current unit standard, and I'll touch a little bit about that, the future of unit standards and the like. I'm not going to try and predict exactly where we're going with QCTOs, but I'll be touching a little bit on that as well. So I have to declare that we've got a bit of a commercial interest in making this available as well, between the training and then possibly helping companies to put their emergency preparedness in place. So let me talk to the slide that you see in front of you. As you've heard, we're recording, so the recording will be available, and we will also make a version of the slideshow available in PDF to everybody that attended. The intent is that as we have emergency preparedness being looked at, that we will all of a sudden multiply the eyes that are busy looking at all the workplace hazards, which will make workplaces so much safer. People will know and hopefully understand the different hazards that is in place, and also be able to be better prepared. I see that we have a hand up. If I can ask you that we will field questions towards the end of the presentation, but if there's something specific, if you don't mind just placing that in the chat box. Warren, I do see that your hand is up over there.
100%. Sorry, Marius, to interrupt. Just there's no presentation being shared.
No presentation being shared. Warren, thanks for pointing that out. Let me immediately try and remedy that. My apology. There we go. Thanks for pointing that out, Warren. It appears that it is now a little bit fixed. Sorry, I didn't hear that last comment. There was a lot of feedback, as if you've got two mics on. Can I just get a bit of an indication, a few thumbs ups or some shout out that you can now see our slides?
I'm logged into a webinar.
Okay, thank you. I quickly went back one slide so you can see that at least we put some pretty pictures and a few interesting words together. Thank you very much, Warren, and everybody else that highlighted that. So this is where I was talking about the reasons why we're busy looking at that. A better prepared workplace, understanding your hazards. And if we approach preparedness appropriately and correctly, it actually becomes prevention. That's one of the key issues that I hope people will take away from this is, as we put the group of people together to look at how do I react in an emergency, they'll be seeing things that would potentially be an emergency in future, but at the same time think about, well, what can I do to prevent that from happening? So good preparedness translates into good prevention. Our employees at the workplaces should be much safer. We need to have a look, and we'll touch on one or two legal aspects, but that would be one of the automatic outcomes. Good preparedness, safer workplaces. Financially, we predict that companies will avoid some risks, including fines for unsafe workplaces by our Department of Employment and Labour Inspectorate, and other expenses that could come around. But over and above this, what we have seen in the workplaces is that proper and good preparedness results in quick response, which results in a massive reduction in lost revenue through lost productivity. So emergency preparedness is not only about evacuation and staying outside safe, but it also plays into good business management principles that we can have a look at. Compliance, already touched on that a little bit, and we see that people would look at companies that have good emergency preparedness in a more positive fashion. You walk into a place and you get signed in as a visitor, and they tell you these are the actions to take if there's an emergency. It immediately creates a positive vibe about the place. This slide I've reused from a previous presentation I did in late last year, but just a very quick, I'm not going to talk about all of these things. The principles of emergency preparedness is obvious all over the place. If you start Googling things like this, you will find the principles are very much the same throughout. All right, can I just ask that everybody make sure that they are muted? We are getting some interesting conversations and the likes coming through. All right, thank you. As I say, I don't want to dwell on this slide, just a quick squiz at the World Health Organization gives us principles on emergency preparedness. And we all went through a big World Health Organization worldwide disaster management type event in 2019, 2020. But you will find these principles all over the place. And even in some of the work that we'll be looking at just now, based on the unit standard for the training available in South Africa, you'll see all of these principles reflected in there. Comment there at the end. We've run into quite a few places where having an emergency preparedness plan, they build it in, they write it nicely, somebody signs it off, and it gets put into some assessment or auditing system where somebody then says, yes, we are prepared. But having that written plan and getting a tick from an auditor that the plan exists does not mean that you are prepared. You're only prepared if you put the plan into practice. A very important element to consider. So let's have a look. This is the unit standard when we talk about training. I'm focusing on this a little bit because when we want to move into emergency preparedness in the workplace, people tend to say, well, where do we get training on this? And part of the comment is that we have quite a severe gap in training. Even legislatively, we've got some gaps in terms of, must I have an EP plan or not? We find that people understand that they need to do something, but if I go and read widely legislation, I don't pick that up too much. And in the training environment, we have something like this that is very much on the ground level of that. And the next kind of education, training, higher education that we run into is doing something through the National Disaster Management environment, either DEMISA or one of the universities of technology and a couple of other things like that. So we don't have anything in between kind of your NQF level 3, 4, and then the next thing that we see is a higher NQF, like a NQF 7 even, that might be in place. So I want to focus a little bit on what people should understand in terms of emergency preparedness, but not only focused on that unit standard that talks about understanding the emergencies in your workplace, a response to an alarm, what to do at an assembly point, and then there's a comment about emergency control centers that's in that unit standard. Over and above that, we're going to have a little bit of a look at, well, what does the law say? When we talk about emergency preparedness, there must be a team. And I very simply indicated there must be somebody looking after fire, first aid, and evacuation at the very, very minimum side of things. We'll also have a bit of a look at, well, what should be in my emergency plan? A lot of people might think it's just an evacuation plan, but an emergency preparedness plan is more than just that. Also, something that needs to be considered is once the incident is finished, is my work then finished? No, we're going to have to look at what happened during the incident. How do I get back? And for those of you that have an interest in that, I think it's a very generally used term, resilience, even sustainability is a term. So if we have good emergency preparedness and we act appropriately after the incident, we move towards being more resilient, and we create some sort of sustainability within our workplaces. And then just a comment also that we'll touch on a little bit, planning to test your plan. it's not just, oh, today let's randomly put off the alarm and see what happens. You need to plan to test your plan, and that's got to do with maintaining the plan throughout. So when we have a look at the workplace, we need to understand when we have our workplace that there'll be things that we can package as an emergency and things that could be packaged just as an incident. So when you look at this type of language being used in that environment, think a little bit about the occupational safety side of things, where we have lost time injuries based on incidents that have happened. So sometimes I have an incident that is a slip, trip, and fall, for example. But if that slip, trip, and fall is of such a magnitude that I have to now activate part of my emergency response team, have a broken leg set, it moves towards possibly now not just being an incident where the first aider sits next to the person and help them a little bit to get to the medical center or put a bandage on something, but it becomes a bit of a response to that, all the way through to emergencies that now require everybody to start responding, including the normal people in the workforce or the people that's at that workplace visiting or doing contractual work. They have to evacuate. So there's a distinction between an incident, which doesn't require the alarms to be put off, to put it simply, an emergency where we are going to put the alarms off. As we then have a look at our workplace, we have to have a look, well, what can happen and how likely is it that could happen? We can even have a look at how the impact of it, if you look at the last bullet point there, on the different arenas within our workplace. Can you see how this now fits in for those of you that understand risk assessment language with the risk assessment principles? One thing that I always like people to be alerted to, in many risk assessment environments, people would then guide you to understand, well, let's have a look at the 100 or 1,000 risks, but let's address the top few. In essence, we don't want you just to, from an emergency preparedness point of view, single out the ones that has the highest impact, the ones that has the highest likelihood. If you've identified that a dustbin can burn in your office area and that could need response from your fire team, you need to be prepared for that. So emergency preparedness goes beyond some of the risk management principles that a lot of us might have gotten used to, that we should be prepared throughout for any kind of happenstance that could come. Then we have to have a look at, do we know how we will be alerted of that emergency? In my emergency preparedness plan, there must be some indication of how we will alert everybody in the workplace that there is now an emergency. And also, do they then know what to happen? Too many times we've seen alarms go off in shopping centers or some building that we have been in, and everybody just sits around and they're quite confused. They don't know, is this a real incident? Is this something that we must respond to? Or are we just testing something today? All of those elements need to be considered when we think about the alarms that need to be made so that people then take the correct action. And let's go back to my statement where I said it doesn't help that I have a plan which has an alarm described in it and we haven't told anybody or tested it. It needs to be an active plan that everybody understands how to react. Keep in mind, not all workplaces need different alarms for different events. Some workplaces are small and not that complex. A single alarm, whether it is a fire, a bomb, some kind of threat, people type threat, attack from outside, attack from inside, the alarm will sound and I will go out. Other places become very complex, and we have to then be very clear about the alarms in terms of, for a fire type thing, our reaction is different. For a bomb threat, our reactions are different. For a chemical spill, our reactions might be very different, even to the point that we might not want to evacuate with certain chemical spills happen on site. One of my nice examples I always like to refer to is with the Coburg arena, where if their alarm goes off for a nuclear event, and for those of you that wonder, they are very sharp in terms of their preparedness. They, under their nuclear license, they practice every single year, full-scale practices. But their number one reaction is go and protect yourself in place. They have assigned buildings where people will evacuate to that building, and then they have buses come in so that the people are not exposed to any fallout unnecessarily. Very, very well-organized system, and you see how that evacuation for that complexity is quite different from a small place where our own workplace here, where I'm sitting today, we might have 10 people in the place today. One alarm goes off, we all go to the assembly point outside. But our plan needs to make that clear, and then we have to understand what to do. To support all of this, there's emergency signage. The most obvious one that you can think of is the one that makes us think of evacuation, and hopefully then tells you exactly how not to act in evacuation. The little white running man on the green background. That tells us this is your evacuation route, and then all of us are wondering, but why is the man running? Because we all always say, do not run. Walk calmly, take it seriously, go to the assembly point. So there's a whole element of the emergency signage, not just on the evacuation side, but there are some warning signage that we need to keep in mind in our different workplaces, and also where some of the equipment is that I might need to use during an emergency. First aid equipment, first aid firefighting equipment, and the like. So follow the signs. But it's more than just that. We need to also be aware of a number of other elements that come to play. Have a look at that. Where do we come from in terms of being prepared? The National Disaster Management Act actually uses the word emergency preparedness. Interestingly, it uses it in relation to disasters. But it is there that we have to consider emergency preparedness in terms of that. The Occupational Safety Act says we must have a safe workplace. The Major Hazard Installation Regulations, with support from SANS 1514, is very direct that those sites must have emergency preparedness plans, one on the site for the people on the site, and then the local government must put something together how they will respond off-site, which then has a look at community being involved and affected by the incident and the likes. If you can get a hold of SANS 1514, very good principles, usable, and I'll show you a little picture soon, very usable for all types of emergencies. National building regulations say that all occupants and users must be able to safely evacuate. Your ISO 45000 is very direct about having to have emergency preparedness plans, but not everybody subscribes to that kind of control system, quality safety control systems. Some bylaws, they do talk fire brigade or emergency services bylaws. They have different titles. They do talk about having emergency preparedness as part of your environment. I see that somebody has mentioned SANS 10090, and we can certainly have a look at how that plays into the whole environment. That is something that we believe that standard needs a major revamp, and we will be participating in that. And I invite everybody to watch the SABS space when that revision starts properly, so that we can see maybe that's one place where we can augment the entire emergency preparedness element. So already mentioned, there's some gaps. Not going to dwell on that too much. Yeah, these slides are for your consumption. Just a few interesting points in terms of the Disaster Management Act and framework, where emergency preparedness pops out its head there. Already discussed the fact that the Major Hazard Installation Regulation has requirements for on-site and off-site plans. Now, those requirements, you see that there's a 2023 version of that regulation, but right from the beginning, the on-site and off-site plans were required. This latest version now calls SANS 1514 up in the regulation, making that a mandatory requirement that if you're MHI site, your EP plans must reflect what's in SANS 1514. Bylaws, just gave you an example there from the Kuruleni bylaw, which gives you not only that the chief can designate places that they should have emergency evacuation plans. If one day I get opportunity to comment on a revision of that, we'll change it from just evacuation to emergency preparedness plans. We pick up that a lot of people think that emergency preparedness is just about evacuation, but it is more than that. By the way, that specific bylaw, as many others, is a free download. If you go and have a look, you don't have to buy that off of a government printer or anybody. And it has a bit of a pro forma, an example of what a plan can look like. To move on to the next slide, this is from SANS 1514. And if you have a look at the flow of things there, do your risk assessment, identify what can go wrong. Think back to one of those first slides, the World Health Organization principles. The other slide, what the unit standard alludes to, know your workplace. What can go wrong there? Evaluate those things. How bad can it be? What impact can it have? How often can it happen? But make sure that it's credible. That was important when we worked on this one, that people mustn't come up with funny scenarios for major hazard installations. Now, when you look at your normal workplace, it still needs to be credible. But for this one, the intent was that they wanted to not see in the major hazard installation plan the basic emergency preparedness events. So don't put in, for major hazard installations, don't put in your slip, trip, and fall and your smaller incidents. This one is supposed to be for major incidents onwards. So if you look at this for your own use in terms of normal EP plans, that point number 3 is a little bit less of import, but do apply it appropriately. Then you develop the plan. The plan needs to be reviewed in terms of the MHI regulation together with the local authority, because you can't have one plan on site and something entirely different that is off-site. They need to talk to each other, That's the purpose of the review. Not quite, I'll approve your plan or not approve your plan. Although I do pick up that some people do run a bit of an approval process. Very important, test the plan. And this is where things then become a little bit more complex with the spider that, the web that appears under that. And I'm going to very shortly sum whatever comes from point number 7 through to point number 13. Once you've tested your plan, you will do the updating as necessary. Tell the people, train the people, new rules have come in, new approaches have come in, and there's that continuous monitoring that you have to do. And this is a good indication, not only with major hazard installations, but with all emergency preparedness. From the simplest one at my little office here with 10 people today, through to a site, refinery or whatever with a couple of thousand people on the site. You will never stop testing, improving, and keeping the plan up to date. Some of it will just go much quicker. There we go. Then we also want to update people, keep them educated about at the assembly point, what needs to happen there. Roll call, that for many years that was something that was thought about very simply. Well, I go outside, I have a list of names of people, and I tick them that they are here or not. Those people that are not here, we will let the emergency services know, fire department, police, ambulance, when they come, we've done roll call, we have everybody here, or we're missing XYZ person. But roll call in some places can become quite a harrowing affair. And we've seen some very interesting approaches where people have, many of you must have gone to a place where when you drive in, they scan your driver's license and your car. Now there's roll call systems that can be linked to that. Having come in through the gate, whether you're a full-time employee, a visitor, a contractor, doesn't matter. At the entrance point, now the computer system on the site knows that you are there. You've been scanned in somehow. And there's a possibility of then having on a smartphone, so your evacuation warden would, on their smartphone at a place, go through the normal system. These are the people I'm responsible for. Are you here? Are you not? Call the roll. But then anybody that had to evacuate with that group can then be captured as well. And you correlate that with your entry database, people that have come on site. So there's things like that available. And as you listen to this, you might be sitting there, oh, I might have been scanned in as the driver, but my 3 passengers didn't show them their car license or some form of identification. So I'm not saying that is a magic bullet solution, but there are solutions out there, computer-based, that one can use for roll call. Very important that we do it, as I mentioned, for the fact that we need to know that everybody is safe. And if we then identify a missing person, there's certain actions that can be taken. I'm reminded of a chap, I'll use his name because I'm not going to say bad things about him, Wynand Engelbrecht, that would carry on this, say, well, a firefighter would put their lives at danger if they know that another life is at danger. If you arrive as a firefighter, first responder, and you get told everybody is safe, your actions and your approach will most probably be more defensive and you not put yourself in danger. But if you get there and they tell you we have one person missing, their actions will become more aggressive and they will take chances with their own health and safety, their own lives, to try and do the right thing, rescue that person. But it goes beyond that roll call as well. We want people to understand what should be in an emergency plan. It is not just the evacuation. I've said that already. And there are many examples. In the presentation, if you get it, I have a link to the London Fire Brigade's example of a good emergency plan. There's another resource. I personally like the Aussies, the Australian resources, excellent resources in terms of emergency plans. But as you've already heard, we've got a SAND standard written for a specific risk environment, but you can have a look at that and that'll give you some very good resources to use. Your Fire Brigade bylaws, another good resource. Many resources out there that can help you understand what should go in a plan, even help you understand how to develop the plan. Another element that we want people to be aware of is, what do I do with people with disabilities? And keep in mind, those disabilities are not just my wheelchair-bound colleague or my wheelchair-bound visitor. It could go and be related to sight impaired, hearing impaired, and there's a whole plethora of impairments that would make it challenging for people to react appropriately to the emergencies that we have on our site. And we need people to understand that they have to plan for that. If we have that happen on the site, do I have a buddy system, for example, for somebody that is sight impaired? Do I have a means of alerting the hearing impaired about the alarm, because they might not hear the alarm? Things like that. Be prepared to help the people with those disabilities still stay safe. We also need people to understand the different roles and responsibilities of the emergency team. Again, as I did in the beginning, fire, first aid, evacuation. But often you might run into a place that's far more complex, and you need to have other members join your emergency team to take certain emergency actions. Understanding that there's my day job. I pitch up to do all kinds of answering emails and admin work and all kinds of things when I get here to the Fire Protection Association of Southern Africa. But if the alarm goes off, I might just be the evacuee. My only job is to go and stand under the tree where our assembly point sign is. Or I could be told, well, Marius, today, not just today, well, in the plan, we've given you training as a first aider. Once you hear the alarm, you stop being the email answerer, etc., and you grab your first aid kit, and you are now first aider. And as that, I would have responsibilities, day duties outside of the emergency. As a first aider, is my kit fully stocked? Do I have everything up to date in terms of that? Do I have the checklist? Do I have any of the things in the kit that's expired that needs to be replaced? There would be normal duties as a first aider, and then when the alarm goes off, I would have to be ready with my emergency duties. Do I still know how to stop bleeding? Do I still know how to do CPR? Am I ready to take those emergency actions when they happen? And we believe that people need to be well versed in that and aware of the different roles and responsibilities. A little bit of an introduction also to what from the emergency services, the incident command system. As a country, we're still working towards getting a single approach to incident command, but a lot of that has been sorted out. In terms of our emergency preparedness, we don't want people to understand about sector commands and this and that and the other thing, but to understand that once the external help arrives, they're going to need one of us to come and fit into a bigger system where they will be handling the emergency. People also need to understand what makes for a good assembly point. Don't put it right next to your LPG cylinder, because that might not be the safest place for you to have everybody assemble. There's some safety considerations to look at. There are elements of comfort that one has to maybe think about. Again, more complex sites and things. We might be outside in the sun for many, many hours. I have personally been part of incidents like that as an evacuee, not as a responder, visiting some place where we stood outside in the blazing sun for quite a while. To the credit of that group, they did bring along water supplies, drinking water and the like, so that they took care of some of the comfort. Again, more complex sites, more complex emergencies that can happen, the more we'll have to have a think about what our assembly areas should be prepared for. I did touch a little bit about the protect in place with the Quebec example, but this can also be chemical spillage, corrosive, gas clouds hanging around. If you evacuate through that, you're actually causing a problem. So protect in place is an element that we need people within emergencies to understand, and not just at the complex places. I might be working in a workplace just a half kilometer away from a place where they make farm chemicals. The farm chemicals could get together and create a poisonous cloud, which is then a very known thing for the people, hopefully, known for the people that work with the farm chemicals. But now I get told to evacuate the area as well. And if I'm not familiar enough with what can happen, I might evacuate right into that cloud, and then my trouble really starts. So there might be a protect in place, and I think a generally more understood element is an alternative assembly point where I look at the wind direction and the like, so that I do not evacuate through a high risk kind of situation. You'll see this slide is very bland, because when I looked at this, I couldn't think about shushing it up too much. It's the paperwork and the communication structures. Yeah, this is the bland stuff. But the bland stuff is quite important to keep all of the real emergency preparedness running smoothly. We have to have the right records. We have to look at how do we communicate with each other. And again, I can tell you, this is of all of the evacuation exercises that I have had the privilege of assessing. This is one of the main failure areas. People struggle with getting their communication working properly. Beyond this, we say you need to then, if you have a big enough structure that you have a control center, people get together there. The people in that center needs to understand their roles and responsibilities. This is a little bit different from the responders, the people busy handling the emergency where the emergency is happening. These are the control staff that's busy making some more strategic type of decisions that is necessary. The paperwork again. If I have a head of emergency preparedness, that person needs to be appointed appropriately. And in that appointment document, those roles and responsibilities are then clearly described to that person. So that when they sign for it, they are acknowledging that that is the job that they will do during the emergency. I've commented quite a bit already on the testing of the plan, recording the improvements, and a bit of a comment there. We believe that the norm, nationally, internationally, etc., annually, at least annually, you need to test your plan. You need to plan that and execute it according to a schedule. If I don't put a date in the year where we're going to do it, then I'm not planning, and we all know that thing. If you fail to plan, you will actually be busy planning to fail. So put it on a schedule, have a date. There's potential, lots of discussion about, well, should I do my emergency preparedness drills and exercises as a surprise, or should I announce it to people? There's basically two major trains of thought. If I surprise them, then I see the real thing. I'm a little bit more inclined to say, I'll tell you what day I'm putting off the alarm. We'll make sure it's a mandatory day. You'll have to be at the office. You can't now, because we've announced the schedule, make your very important appointment that day. I'll announce it. It'll happen. And we will still see whether you are acting appropriately when the alarm goes off. And if you've then polished up the week before, if you sat with all of your people and you said, oh, the drill's coming, we'd better be perfect, I think we are achieving something. We're achieving that improvement element, although it might be good at some point to have a surprise drill. There is definite value in, for me, making a mandatory appointed day and date so that people will go through the steps. But there isn't a clear decision worldwide which one is better. Both have their pros and both have their cons. When you do practice and exercise and do drills, be specific about what gets tested. Too many people would say, oh, that's the day we'll put off the alarm and we'll see what happens. Put a scenario together that looks at one of those hazards that you've identified. Put a bit of a story together to say, well, I'll need my first aiders to do X, Y, Z. I need my evacuation people to do the following, so that you can test certain specific elements which you might be a little bit concerned about, that they're not in place as they should be. Be specific. And then prepare the people that will be contributing and the people that will be assessing. Don't just drop the alarm, 10 minutes later we're done, and then we can put that into our ISO 45000 file. We did our EP exercise for the year. Make it count, because it's important. Yeah, and then the paperwork. Maintain the plan, update the plan, distribute the plan, do training on the changes that you've had to implement. Just a few comments as we rushing to the end of this. We've got less than 10 minutes to go. As you get involved with emergency preparedness, be prepared for the resistance. People come up with the funniest things, and especially some, my apologies to any of you that might fit this categorization, some senior management. It's, no, we're too busy. We can't leave this meeting now. we have to finish this meeting. Just tell that EP person we're not participating in the draw now. There will be some resistance. Do try and get ahead of that. Get support from senior management. Try and sell the importance of being prepared, but do make sure that it actually does happen. Yeah, I'm not going to spend much time on this. We did mention that there's some gaps. We do profess that there is a solution. And this slide represents what I believe is the way forward through the Department of Employment and Labour, either inclusion in a existing OH&S regulation or a whole new regulation that says every workplace must have an EP plan, and every workplace, excuse me, I just want to clear my throat. Sorry, I do hope I hit the mute button early enough that I didn't cough in your ears. And every workplace must have a fire safety plan. We believe that that would create a much safer workplace, and all of the other advantages that having a prepared environment that can stop emergencies and react to emergencies will bring, like financial loss that is minimized. So there you go. That's our presentation. I have left a few minutes. We did start 2-3 minutes late. So if you'd like to field any questions, I see quite an activity in the chat area. But if you've got a specific question, I think we can take 3 or so questions. Just indicate, and we'll give you opportunity to ask.
Hi, Marius.
Yes, hi.
There is a question from Devon Governor regarding the City of Joburg street explosion.
Yes.
Can you see it, or must I read it to you?
No, I can see that.
Okay.
Devon, we have not been involved in the investigations and the ongoings over there. But what I am willing to say about an incident like that is, for a public space like that, there is not really an emergency preparedness structure or anything that you can put in place. What we do see people that have pipelines do is they mark the pipelines, they warn the community about the pipeline. So there's some preventative elements that go in there. And in actual fact, if under the major hazard installation regulation, your pipeline does become an MHI, gets registered as an MHI, there is a requirement that you must have a plan and that you must test and practice the plan. But a place like that, I think, would not necessarily have been, well, it certainly wouldn't have been seen as a major hazard installation. It is not an incident that came about because of a tank that's installed somewhere, the tank leaked, etc. It was potentially, and I'm guessing at some of this, but potentially not the right type of maintenance of the system, which allowed for a gas buildup, and then the incident happened. So you can't really go and make an emergency preparedness plan for all roads that have stormwater drainage under them, if you follow the logic there. But there is definitely work that can be done in terms of educating the public about if that were to happen, whether it's that explosion, a plane that falls out of the sky. We now have a meteor hurtling at us with a 1 in 32 chance of hitting the Earth in 2032, apparently. So whatever the emergency is, the incident, take the following appropriate action. Now, if in the workplace we've put some focus on emergency preparedness, I can expect that that will translate into safer actions outside of the workplace. You won't see people running up there with their cell phone to get good visuals of the hole in the ground. You'd have people that understand this was an emergency, I need to be away, and hopefully they would also try and influence the people in that area to be away. Again, I'm not going to be able to speak about the detail of it, but think about the Boksburg LPG tanker explosion. People were told, stay away, stay away, stay away. And obviously some of them did not take that action. And we know the tragedy that unrolled over there. I believe that that is still very much under investigation. So I'm talking as a sideline observer, a Boksburg resident, with some of the anecdotal things that I've heard people say. So I hope that addresses your question there. We do want people to be prepared. We most probably have control over workplaces, but a public element like that, most probably not very suitable for that solution. But the disaster management, the emergency preparedness, well, they need to know that this kind of thing can happen. Yeah. Good question. Thank you. I do not see any hands. I really would like to invite any questions, any comments. You see our screen over there. You have many ways of interacting with us. So thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate you having spent the time with us. And we will be running a few more of these as we journey through the year. So we're looking forward to seeing you at these events as well. Any feedback that you've got where we can improve, we'll appreciate that very much. Thank you.